Marlana Cork, we are back for what is probably the last episode. We might throw in a little bonus episode, but for sure the last meaty episode on how to choose the right career for you. And I love this episode because it's what happens after you get the job. That this idea that I've got my job and now everything stops and now I just can come into work and I don't have to think about that. That typically ends up not being true. So Marlana, after, let's say that I've done all this work, I've applied for the job, I've gotten the job that I wanted. Now what?
Well, guess what? The work doesn't end. You want to continue to reevaluate. Okay, everything that you've done that self-assessment, started doing all of your research. Now you're here. You're in everything. You're in that job that you want. Take a look after that first year. What have I done? What have I learned? Do I need to brush up on some skills? Have I struggled in any area? And this is going to help job seekers and those that are employed at this point reevaluate constantly and be more proactive as to taking ownership of their career goals.
I love that you use the word ownership because sometimes I think not intentionally we get a new job and we feel successful and then we go into the position and we almost become passive participants.
Yes, I like that
because it's a new job, new situation, new environment. It's information coming out of a fire hose.
You get comfortable.
Yeah, and then it's like, well, I'm just trying to do my job, and then you wake up 5 years later going, I've never really been happy in this.
Yes.
When, to your point, if after you get that job, you are trying to crush this job, you're trying to be a great employee, but at the same time, you're trying to keep in mind, does this align with my values?
Yes.
Is it giving me my must-haves?
Yes.
Basic questions like, am I happy in the day-to-day tasks that I'm doing? Or at least, can I sustain these day-to-day tasks that I'm doing?
Yes.
And if you never think about it as taking ownership of your position, you can end up becoming kind of an employment victim. And then 5 years down the road, you're like, man, I wish I would have taken a more intentional approach to this 5 years ago because I could be in a different situation.
Right. Because initially, again, let's face it, we bring our representative to that interview as well as on the employer end. Hey, we're a great organization. We want you. We want your skill set. But you may get there and you really find, and it's not a bad thing, don't get me wrong, that it's not really a lot of opportunity for growth. So sometimes you have to seek that out. And what does it take for me to get there? Sometimes some individuals get into a certain position and they're good. They're lifers. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But if you are hungry for more, you want more responsibility, you want to be out more, then you're going to have to take ownership for that. And I have seen in different situations where individuals may not get what they need. And you know what? That's okay. You may not. But then what are you going to do about it? And you said it. You can't be a career victim, in these situations. So that's where you go back to reevaluate. Again, what are my must-haves? What are my goals? What are my values? And then, again, continue to keep track of that. Continue to reevaluate what you started with in the beginning. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Because, again, you may have started with something else and that transitioned into something else later on down the line. We are human beings and we're going to constantly change. And if you don't, that's okay. It doesn't make you a sucky human being.
Yeah, right.
However, you're just happy where you are. But if you're not, then you have to step up to say, this is what I need for me. If you're feeling unsatisfied, again, reevaluate your career. It may not necessarily mean that you're leaving that employer. Maybe they have other opportunities that's going to help you flourish where you need to flourish.
Yep.
Where you feel like, okay, it's going to give me a little more. I want to get a little more gritty in this, and this is where it's going to take me. Yep. And if you need to leave that employer altogether, that's okay as well.
Yep. You have a note here to make the most out of your first year.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
When I say make the most out of your first year, you have to be honest with yourself. First of all, you're learning the job. You're learning all the technology that comes with it, depending on what your skill level is at when you come in there, from technology to, whatever it is that you're doing. We stuck with nursing and something in the medical field, and when we talked in the past. So you look at where you need to adjust, because we go in with this mind frame that, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm just going to do this. But then you realize you may have more disgruntled individuals that you're working with. And how do I adjust to bring down and diffuse those situations? That may not have been something I had to do in the past.
Yep.
You need to then also make note of that. Because I talked about this with previous employers, when you have that first year evaluation with that job seeker, or, with that employee, are you looking at and reevaluating, their skill set and how they're progressing? What is it that they may need to do, and what support can be provided? And from the job seeker end, what support do you need? Employers are not mind readers.
True.
They don't know what you need unless you tell them. Okay. I
true.
know we as women sometimes look at our husbands and say, you just need to love me this way. But we never communicate that, because you're just supposed to know.
Yeah.
No, wrong answer.
Yeah, and I love this approach of really trying to make the most out of your first year, because
Yes.
I know from my past experience, my history, I've been in situations where I was a little bit of a job hunter, because I went into a job I really, really wanted. And I thought that after I became an employee, the gates of heaven would open and God himself would say, welcome home. And, everything would be
And you're done.
perfect and all this stuff. And when you set that kind of expectation, you can't help but be disappointed, because whenever you're working with people, whenever you're working with a job, like, there's going to be things that disappoint you. There's going to be things that you don't like as much. There's going to be little situations of conflict, because that's how people work, especially when you get lots of people into one thing called a business.
Yeah.
And there's so many interactions and so many things to do and different levels of experience. Like, that's gonna happen.
Yes.
And I love this encouragement to go in, make the most out of your first year, crush it, give yourself some space to say, I'm learning this. I'm not going to write it off right away.
Right.
And then if you're evaluating as you go, by the end of the first year, I think you can make a pretty good call on, is there a future for me here? Am I feeling a pull to this field, but maybe in a different role? Am I more about being promoted in a different aspect? Is this not for me at all? And so just being mindful about that experience while putting both feet in, not keeping one foot out the door and saying, I'm going to peace out as soon as I'm angry or frustrated.
No, you absolutely hit the nail on the head, Phil. You have to keep an open mind, and you have to be honest with yourself as to what's going on. And you have to be willing to say, it's not necessarily the employer, it may be me.
Yep.
So what do I need to do to make some adjustments? Because again, you said it, you're talking about different environments. This is not the previous environment. And sometimes we come in with those misconceptions on, well, it wasn't like this before, or I didn't experience that before. This is a whole new playing field, and you just have to adjust accordingly. So keep note of that. Really keep track. And again, it goes back to the intentionality of, what do you want? Are things aligning the way you want? If you really see some obvious things, then of course you make decisions as you need to.
Right.
But just keeping track of all of that. And then having those conversations with your employer if there is adjustments that you need to make. Yep.
One of the best career pieces of advice I got when I was a teacher, and I was trying to decide between staying in the school and in the position I was in, and taking a new position over at a school in Wisconsin. And I talked to some mentors of mine. And they did a great job of not telling me what to do either way. But what I do remember was, one of them said, don't run away from something, run towards something. And
I like that.
while that's, any piece of advice is painting with a very broad brush, for me at least, that was a great motivator to really evaluate what I was doing. Because if you're if you're frustrated or you're like, oh, I just don't know if this is for me, and and like that's the thing that's saying I need a new career after this new career.
Yeah.
You're going to end up being a job hopper because you're going to get into every situation and something's going to make you feel disappointed.
Yes.
But running towards something, especially after you've done the self-assessment and you know what you need as a human and all of these things, now you can run towards something and say, well, I know that this isn't for me.
However,
I have a better look at what is for me. Now I have a clearer vision. Like I know that I'm not here to be a nurse, but what I'm really gravitating towards is influencing an entire crew of nurses. And now you can say, okay, administration is my thing. That means I have to go to school for this, go to school for this. My job has a reimbursement program for such things. This is how I have to organize my life. And now you're cruising.
Yes. Oh, Phil, oh my goodness. You're just speaking music. It's music to my ears because we reevaluate so much. You know, you like you said, you may look at, hey, I want to go in administration. I want to go in leadership. And then some may say leadership is completely overrated.
Terrifying for me too. Yeah.
Exactly. That's not what I want to try. But then if you try it to say that isn't for me, that's awesome. Because you gave it a shot. And that's what all of this is all about. Continuing learning and growing. You should be doing that every day, personally and professionally. And whatever it takes to get there, you just take it one step at a time and make notes of what is it that I need to evaluate? What is it that I need to look at? And what can I change? What's within my willpower?
Amen. So I personally, I've done so much learning and growing through this series. Again, an encouragement to people, if you have not listened to all the episodes, go back and listen to them in order, pick up some tips, take some quick notes, and man, your career path is just going to be a little bit more clear. It's going to be more helpful. It's going to help you make better decisions.
Yes.
And so go back to the website, www.heybaycity.com, to take a look at those, look at all our past stories and podcasts, our community information, our Hey Bay City job board, all of the fun stuff that you can find on heybaycity.com. And stay tuned for more because we've got at least 2 more years worth of work for us podcasts, along with all the great stories from people from the Bay County community. And I'm looking forward to talking to you more, Marlana.
Same here, Phil. Thank you so much.
Cut. Sweet.